I'm Brian Hiatt. This is Rolling Stone Music Now. I'm joined today by Rob Sheffield and Brittany Spanos. So, Rob and Brittany, it is summer, and I've gathered you here to talk about how it's become a truly hot pop summer. Every summer is a hot pop summer, but this summer feels especially hot, especially poppy. There have just been so many breakthroughs in pop this summer. Breakthroughs of artists who haven't had breakthroughs before, and breakthroughs of artists who've been around for a while and have suddenly risen to a new level. And it's just made the pop landscape feel really fresh all of a sudden. It's pretty exciting. And there's a few big ones. Chappell Roan, who released her album last year, has risen to just enormous heights. She's just conquering the world right now, and it's been so exciting to see. Sabrina Carpenter, who's been around for a while, has had 2 huge hit singles and is suddenly at a whole new level. There's also Tinashe, who's been around for a while and has a huge song. We should also mention Shaboozey, who comes from the country world, but has that amazing single right now at #1. And then someone who's been around for a full decade and has been making hits and great records. But for some young people, she's a brand new artist, Charli XCX, with fantastic album Brat. And so that's part of this too. Charli having a big moment after all this time. Although it's hard for those of us who've been fans for a long time, it's hard for us to wrap our heads around that one because she's just been around and has been great. I don't think there's an answer to this really, but what is it about this moment that's allowed for all of a sudden there's all this kind of freshness and new energy in the pop charts and in pop? Do we have any guesses, wild theories, fan fiction?
I think the unifying thing for all of those artists is really the strength of a really, kind of cult fan base almost. Charli and Tinashe are examples of artists who had really big pop hits early on. Of course, Charli had I Love It with Iconopop. I crashed my car into the bridge. I don't care. I love it. I don't care. Fancy with Iggy Azalea. I'm so fancy. You already know I'm in the best lane. From LA to Boom Clap, like those were all really massive. Sound of my heart, the beat goes on and on and on and on and boom clap. You make me feel good, come on to me. Tinashe had 2 on. Let's roll. She was like touring with Nicki early on and had like early breakthroughs, but spent a lot of years in the trenches of the industry for both of them. I think both of them, they continue to release really great music, but always struggle to match the level of their first hits, even though they had these fan bases who loved them and who were selling out their shows and were really paying attention to those albums that were still really incredible. And I think now in the context of it, underrated. The fan base has stuck with them, and I think that sort of led to breakthroughs for them. I think for Sabrina and Chappell and Shaboozey, I think these artists who over the last few years, after a pretty rough period for new artists to break through, especially with the pandemic, with no touring, with kind of the mess of that, it feels like they also, again, had a very similar version of they built fan bases, they built buzz over years that thanks to the cosigns of really major artists, with Sabrina going on the Taylor tour, with Chappell going on the Olivia tour, with Shaboozey being on the Beyonce album, just helped give that much needed nudge for people to be like, oh, look at all this music that has been sitting right in front of me, and look at these brand new songs that all 3 of them just happened to release. All happened to be 3 of their best songs they've released so far. It's just like a beautiful moment for all of them. It really just comes down to there were people who loved them and just stuck around and waited. And then finally, all of that sort of word of mouth and build up really happened organically.
Also, there's a general sense of the pop scholarship. These are very ambitious artists who really wanted to make high impact summer songs. They're deep fans with a sense of history who have definitely that ambition to make a song of the summer kind of song of the summer. And that's something that they all were at a level where they knew that this was a goal that they wanted to reach for. And it's funny that they have, as Brittany said, they've all been in the trenches, building their buzz, building what they do. But they definitely had their eyes on this summer as a battleground, not necessarily against each other, but against history.
In general, I think people have been worried for a long time that the sort of star-making machinery of the industry has broken down to an extent. That is, I think, historically true that there were more big lasting stars made before, and this has been going on for a long time. There were more big lasting stars made before, say, 2012. If you look at Beyonce, Taylor, Coldplay, or whatever, people who've lasted, it really helped to get in before social media and other factors totally fragmented everything. And it got to the point where people were wondering if there would ever be big unifying pop stars again. Still hear people saying that. People were saying that right before Chappell Roan, in the space of 2 weeks, suddenly, obviously had been building for a while, but there was a moment where it just exploded. And suddenly she was a pop artist that everyone was talking about right after people were just saying, oh, there's never going to be a unifying pop star again. One popped up again. Makes one think that maybe the hit-making apparatus is whirring back to life, or maybe this is all fluke. I don't know. It's just interesting to weigh that. I was watching Chappell on Jimmy Fallon, or Jimmy Kimmel, as TikTokers kept calling him, because they literally can't tell the difference. If you're, yes, on one level it's fair. On the other hand, if you're under the age of 22, you have a specific kind of face blindness where you cannot tell the difference between Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon. It's a very factual thing. But to watch her with Fallon, I was like, oh, this is total Star is Born. And it did inevitably remind me of Gaga's rise. Lots of things about her obviously are reminiscent of Gaga, but it did feel, it was just so Star is Born moment when she's sitting there with, even I was like almost Kimmel, when she's sitting there with Jimmy Fallon, you're just like, oh, this is so happening, and I haven't seen this in a while. Is there something to be said about just the general mechanisms for star making and their state of functionality right now?
Yeah, I think what has gotten really messed up over the last decade or so is that I think the industry and major labels have overly relied on viral success instead of artist development. And the reason why a Gaga moment happened when it did is because Gaga had been in the clubs. She had been finding that voice for herself. She had been really hustling, starting off at 100-person sets at Lollapalooza to headlining a few years later. She was really developing herself as an artist over years. Yeah,
I'll just interject, even more than she told me about, she would do those things at gay clubs, gay bars, where she would go on with $50 of production at best, $50 of wardrobe and production, and lip sync to a song. She did everything. She worked it so hard.
Yeah, she was
totally.
She was doing, and I think there's a lot of pros to art and music being readily available and being able to readily spread through TikTok and through Instagram and YouTube and things like that. But I think what a lot of labels have done over the years is sign an artist over that one song and not develop them at all, or hope that they can just keep recreating that one hit for as soon as possible. And if they don't care about them. And with Chappell and Sabrina in particular, they Sabrina, this is going to be Sabrina's 6th album. This is her 2nd label that she's been on. She's been doing this for a long time. If you listen through the albums, you are hearing an artist having to develop herself in a lot of ways over the course of 2 labels and 6 albums to find the identity that she has now. And you can even hear a little bit of the different pop trends that are happening each time her other albums drop, because it's clear someone probably is being you need a hit, you need to make something that's gonna stick. Chappell got dropped from her first label. She was independent for years. She was releasing music independently for 3 years until she got signed again. And the songs that are on her album, the songs that are blowing up now, she released independently. Pink Pony Club. Pink Pony Club. I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Pink Pony Club. I'm gonna keep on dancing down. Hot to Go. Casual. I know what you tell your friends. It's casual. If it's casual now, baby, give me. Those are songs that were all released as an independent artist who was developing herself. She had to do that. Tinashe also left her label and has been independent for years now. And this is her finally having the chance to have authority over herself. And there's a lot of pros now that Chappell and Sabrina are on a label that is supporting them and giving them more resources. And they came to that label developed by themselves, and they had to do that on their own. So I think it's a real testament to artist development, which I think the industry has lacked for some time. You don't get Taylor and Beyonce without what they were doing to hustle to get to be Taylor and Beyonce. They were touring, developing themselves both outside of and within their label structures. I think that gets forgotten because once you get to that level of massiveness. It feels almost like serendipitous, but it's not.
I feel like we should shout out the influence of the LGBT plus community and like how important, how loyal that community can be to pop artists and how much of a boost they can give, especially with Chappell Roan. It's such a big part of helping the groundswell.
Yeah, I think every sort of major pop artist has a really massive gay audience that is supporting them and playing their music in the clubs that deserve to play them, because a lot of clubs that aren't catering to an LGBTQIA audience don't really play pop music. So the places that you can really hear their music in the wild are going to be those bars and clubs and parties. Once you have the support of the LGBTQ community, you have a base level like cult following for the rest of your career. There are so many artists that kind of just have had that have really boosted them and support them. And these artists like cater to them, but also aren't pandering.
That said, it's been a classic thing, particularly with Chappell Roan, this very ineffectual attempt to now gatekeep her. Unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. I know people feel very possessive of her, but the music is just so universally appealing and accessible and broad that unfortunately it's like any original fan base. You just have to grit your teeth and realize that your fave is for everyone now, and it's just the way it is, unfortunately.
It's really funny to see, though. I'm sure you both saw the thing on TikTok where somebody called Chappell the Gen Z Tori Amos. And stuff like that it's funny to see people try to contain these artists who, among the other things they have in common, is they're very ambitious in terms of legend building. And again, we were talking about the legacy of Taylor and Beyonce, but they definitely learned specifically from those artists. And we're seeing now, not the first time we're seeing this, but definitely, I think, the most pronounced time where we're seeing an explosion of artists who have studied the Taylor Beyonce moves in detail and are going for a very specific kind of breakthrough. None of this was accident.
I would add Gaga to
Absolutely.
that. The other really misguided, hilarious gatekeeping thing is, again, this weird confusion about Charli XCX. Someone was like, you're 33, you're not having a hot brat summer. And people are like, Charli XCX is in her 30s. There's a song on the album about whether she should have a baby or not. What the fuck are you talking about? Like
it's
like,
an album made for being in your 30s.
Yeah.
Brat Summer, honestly, as someone who's the same age as Charli, I'm gatekeeping it for all my 30-somethings.
Yes, if anything, you should be gatekeeping it.
You can't have a hot Brat Summer unless you're in your 30s. Yeah. This is now my decree.
And why stop there?
The 30 plus community is claiming Charli XCX, but yeah.
Again, it speaks to your point of one of Charli's massive achievements this summer is convincing a lot of people that she's a new artist.
It's like such a wild thing where it's not even like her intentionally trying to do that. This is such a rollout that feels so connected to her past albums because she's made like Vroom and Pop 2 and has done these sort of clubby rollouts. And it's so fascinating to see how it's happened for this one. I love it because this album's great. But it's also an album where she is very much openly talking about, do I deserve industry success? I used to care so much about the charts, and then here's like your best charting album and your biggest hits right now in years. It's probably only going to get bigger, especially now that Apple is a TikTok dance that's going viral.
To talk specifically about Charli XCX for a minute, again, she's been around for a while. Even that song, I Love It, which was technically credited to Iconopop, I think a lot of people don't know that she was the original artist and writer of that song.
We gotta kill this switch. You're from the set. Don't care. I love it.
She just kind of couldn't wrap her head around releasing it under her own name. So it ended up being in a quote unquote Iconopop song featuring her. I honestly think if she had just kept that song, her career might look a little different. She's said that she got a little bit screwed in that deal and didn't get the proper credit. So that's a weird thing where it's, I think people don't fully, or at least non-super fans don't fully understand how much that song, which was huge 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, was purely her, really. And then it's had, like you said, all these different hits. But this current album, Brat, is the kind of culmination of something that happened in 2016, I think, when A.G. Cook from PC Music began a creative partnership with her, and she plugged into the whole hyperpop thing and PC Music thing. For me, the production on this album, I like pretty much all of her albums, but I think this is some of my favorite production. From start to finish, always interesting, always super modern, super glitchy. It just has this glittering 2024 feel to it.
It's just so fun. The kind of blessing in disguise of I Love It not end up not being like her as the main artist type of single is that she spent a lot of years experimenting and doing a lot of really weird stuff musically, doing things that were very anti-radio and very anti-big pop singles while still being really great pop singles. She was always going against the grain of, I think, what was expected of pop artists, of their trajectory, especially post Boom Clap. I think there was a path she could have very easily gone, and she did not. And she made Room with Sophie instead. And like that sort of, I think, put her on a different level. But yeah, I think that's what's great about it, is that I don't think that we would have gotten Brat if it weren't for her spending years making the weirdest and best pop music imaginable.
Rob, again, not that long ago, it wasn't so wild for an artist in their 30s to make their biggest album yet. It's just only now when people are like, I'm 30, I'm washed up. And in the music industry, it is based on that lack of artist development we were talking about. But once upon a time, it was common.
It was the norm. And it's funny, and it's always been the norm, and it's always also been the norm to lie about it and pretend that's not the norm. And that's just not how it works. Charli is a great example of somebody who's, Brittany said, has been around a long time, and there's a lot of different trajectories for a less interesting career that she could have had she gone a different way. It's funny because I think about 10 years ago seeing Charli at the Jingle Ball, and all the other artists who are on the bill, and how many of them are gone now, if not gone. She's definitely the artist from that lineup who has gone in a very interesting and eccentric way, and has definitely lived on and built a career that is very different from the more conventional career that she could have had back then.
Yeah, I love Talk. Just the way she says the word bathroom makes the whole song for me. It's the best bathroom pronunciation ever.
I followed you to the bathroom, but then I felt crazy.
I've been on an Everything is Romantic kick.
Everything is romantic. Oh. Everything is.
Lately, I love that one, but 365 I think is my number one. I love the breakdown on it. It's so fun.
Here we go. When I'm in the club, yeah, I'm nipping that. When I'm at the house, yeah, I'm nipping that. 365 party girl.
I love a big club song, a big dance song. I'm like, I need to hear this out every single night I go out.
365 is the one. But it's such a great album, and it's such a self-conscious example of, I'm going to make a great album now. This is someone who knew that she had a lot of different kinds of great albums in her, and this is the one that she wanted to make right now.
Chappell Roan's album, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, again, came out last year. The first song that really spread was Casual, the one physically difficult to imagine line about being knee-deep in the passenger seat. Is it casual now? Was just everywhere on TikTok. I think it was one of those things where maybe even before people knew what artist it was, it was just everywhere, and that was the thing that was bubbling under.
Knee deep in the passenger seat, and you're eating me out. Is it casual now? 2 weeks in
It broke through on a lot of levels this year. A lot of it was the live performances. Coachella was a big moment, but that wasn't all.
There's Casual and a few other songs that she had each time gotten a little bit of a fandom from. It's so fun to see that Pink Pony Club is still the big closer at these shows, because that was the first of these independent releases that she dropped so many years ago.
God, what have you done? You're a pink pony girl, and you dance at the club, oh mama.
It was first the Olivia tour. I think a lot of people were the kind of, again, that core fandom that had been slowly building over the last several years were excited to see her play arenas and to open with Olivia, who of course she had opened for a couple of times during the Sour tour, but not extensively the way she had done on the Guts tour. But they obviously share Dan Nigro as the producer that they both work with. Chappell had started working with him, and then they took a break from working together because Olivia was blowing up, and then ended up coming back, and you could hear Chappell in the background doing backing vocals on some Olivia songs as well. And I think the videos from that, because again, this was a hot tour this year, a really hot ticket. I think a lot of people were hearing her for the first time on the Olivia Rodrigo tour, and a lot of younger people were getting really into the songs. Of course, like Hot to Go is so catchy. It's so hard to not want to immediately learn that dance and have it stuck in your head for weeks on end.
That is like the most insanely, ruthlessly brainwormy, catchy thing, literally since YMCA. And I think, judging by the videos I've seen of 3-year-olds doing it, I think that song is going to have YMCA level
Oh, yeah.
levels of like persistence. You'll be hearing that in weddings in 20 years.
Yeah, get it hot like Papa John. I remember when I saw her in early 2023, and at that point, this was only a couple months after Casual, this was at Webster Hall, and she was begging people to do the dance. People were not wanting to do the dance. The audience was like not into doing this dance.
I'm picturing like the Village People biopic. We know it's a hit. The police officer guy's like, come on, guys, YMCA, and the crowd's just not feeling it. I'm sure they could relate.
Yeah, no, it was so funny to see that shift over the last couple of years. Coachella, of course, first festival season is always such a star-making moment. I think for both her and Sabrina ended up really delivering. I think it was a mix of people like at home watching the stream and having seen some of the videos that had gone viral, heard some of the songs at that point on TikTok from the Olivia tour, plus the people at the festival crowding through. It ended up being that made her the must-see festival act of the year because she has been on that circuit. Yeah. And
then, of course, Gov Ball. And I just so admire, honestly, what she did. And that's where it also reminded me of Gaga, because you watch pre-fame, like super old Chappell Roan videos. There's this one where she's singing a Cranberry song. She's just very ordinary. It reminded me so much of, there's exactly that kind of video of Gaga pre-fame where she's just dressed like a person and just singing really well with a cover band. And you can see the force of will it takes to make that transformation. If you cut to just her singing, by the way, perfectly beautiful, this Cranberries cover, but then you cut to her dressed and painted like the Statue of Liberty walking on stage at Gov Ball. And just the incredible bravery of doing something manifestly ridiculous and making it like, it's either going to be ridiculous or it's going to be the biggest thing ever and you're going to be on Jimmy Fallon the next week. And it was the latter. And she just got on there and killed it. And I think that was actually the moment, especially when people saw the size of the crowds at Gov Ball, because that was like the result of all the stuff we were talking about, including Coachella. People were like, oh, it's on.
Yeah, my favorite is the people were splicing together this video of her in 2021 where it's just her. None of the costuming that she started to do more when she started to tour again in 2022, 2023, but just like dressed down, Chappell, like hair is tied back, like it's just her in front of a keyboard. She's at a county fair or something in LA. It's just there's no crowd. It's like in the middle of the day, just her and her piano doing a piano version of Pink Pony Club. And people were doing like these stitches on TikTok of that moment of her performing till 10, 20 people at what is literally a fair. There's like carnival rides behind her and her performing Pink Pony Club at first and then later to do that with Gov Ball and Coachella. And also again, like a very Gaga type of thing where it's those like Gaga performances of her in like a parking lot and like it was like an IKEA parking lot or something, and like performing Just Dance with the two dancers that she always had beside her during that era, and then putting that next to a Grammy performance.
Chappell Roan's album, because tone from all these songs she had for a while in part, just so fucking good. And the songwriting is so sharp. And yeah, I feel like people haven't quite processed, as you mentioned, the Dan Nigro factor. It's the same guy who's just obviously a very able co-writer and producer doing something that's less overtly rocky than he did, for example, on the second Olivia album, or even the first, but does have that, you can feel between him and Chappell, a really deep knowledge of pop and rock history. And definitely some of that rock spirit is in this album. I think on Pink Pony Club it has an actual guitar solo, which you don't hear much. Early on when she says that, can someone play a song with a fucking beat?
Can you play a song with a fucking beat? Hit it like one Papa Bong. Get it hot like Papa John. Make a bitch go on.
It's a flat out rock album to me. You could definitely tell, and that's something that, that Dan brings to these things. We definitely know that there's a 80s new wave sensibility to what Dan does. Certainly the whole idea of a hit song about Olivia fighting with her boyfriend over which one was into Billy Joel, Uptown Girl first. Clearly Dan has some of that spirit himself, because it's a very, honestly, to me, this whole album, especially you mentioned Phenomenon with the play a song with a fucking beat, but it's a very early 80s Prince album in so many ways.
Yeah. On top of the festivals, I think this was what's been fun about both Chappell and Sabrina, because it has felt so parallel in a lot of ways, is that they both perfectly timed the release of new singles around Coachella and after their runs on the Olivia and Taylor tours respectively. They could not have timed better releasing Good Luck Babe, which is, I could not believe how much I am like addicted to that song on top of already being obsessed with Midwest Princess. But Good Luck Babe is such a great Chappell song and such like a perfect start to this next phase of her music. But also, of course, Espresso came the night before Coachella.
Think about me every night, oh, is it that sweet I kiss so? Say you can't sleep, baby, I know that's that me espresso.
These were both excellently timed songs. Chappell's already previewed new songs during Gov Ball that sounded amazing. Obviously, Please is... I like it more than Espresso somehow. So,
I agree.
It's so clearly not a fluke with any of them. It feels just like insane to watch.
Please, 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 don't prove I'm right.
Yeah, Sabrina was someone I have to admit I wasn't, other than her role in the driver's license saga, her big TikTok thing was these outros to nonsense.
I'm talking.
That was where I first really, honestly, because I just hadn't been paying attention to her as an artist, wrongly not taking her that seriously as an artist. And I was exposed, like everyone else, to, so every night she was improvising a different outro to nonsense. And at first I was like, this is the dumbest thing. Would they stop showing this to me? Because they're all so juvenile and silly. And then by the like 50th one, it was starting to Stockholm syndrome me, and I was waiting for the next one. And I do think
Singapore syndrome.
Yeah. and I do think that was a weirdly big part of her rise, is just that, that every single one went viral. And there was just, and what happens is you're just seduced into the knowing silliness of the thing. It's been a while since someone kind of played that particular part, embracing that sort of starlet-y kind of old school thing that she's doing very knowingly and very intelligently. But then, like you said, Espresso, the weirdness of the lyrics, the super inherent virality of, in the most old-fashioned sense of, I'm working late because I'm a singer, that would have been a hit 20 years ago, would have been hit 10 years ago. It's just so catchy and particular. But yeah, and then it could have been, that's the thing, it could have been the one hit from this album that could not have been more pressure on the next single. And then I agree, Please, which by the way was a collaboration with Jack Antonoff. Again, some familiar names coming up. And that chorus is incredible. That song's even better than Espresso, I think.
Yeah, the way she says motherfucker.
Break is one thing, my ego's another. I beg you don't embarrass me, motherfucker.
Brittany, what are the good Sabrina songs before this era?
Honestly, I had not been that into her music. I couldn't really get into her albums. I had known a few friends who were like really on top of it. And again, it didn't have the personality that I think we're seeing from her now. I think she was getting into with her last album, Emails I Never Sent. I think that was like the beginning of that sort of, we were really getting to see Sabrina and not, here is this Disney kid that we are trying to sell. Obviously, it was a very young and still figuring out her own voice. And again, my artist development rant rings true still. But I think I couldn't really get into a lot of her stuff before her last album. I liked, it wasn't like a super standout for me. I did really love Feather, so I was excited that song that was the first, I think that went top 10 or top 20. Like that song had done very well.
Act like a bitch, you fit every stereotypes in the pic. Half the song is flying like a feather with you out my life.
And I think this album and kind of the personality and the sort of just like really fun, like very Dolly Parton, like 70s Dolly Parton-esque like aesthetic that she's going for is really fun and feels so her and feels so like unique to her. And so she's carrying it so well. And these songs I think are her best songs yet.
Yeah, I think Olivia did her a ton of favors, just the way that she returned from that extremely unwelcome high profile moment with Olivia, and that she took a total heel turn with the supervillain mode of emails. I'll never send in. And especially because I liked a boy, and that there was this whole supervillain mode that she chose where she really came into her own and discovered, among the other things she is, that she is just insanely funny, which I've never noticed in her music before. And it's something that we're seeing about all these artists that we're talking about today. And we haven't really gotten into Shaboozey yet, but these are artists who are, very much funny artists, in a way that is definitely in keeping with their sense of pop scholarship. But I don't know if she even realized how funny she was until she began making it a huge part of her brand with Nonsense and with her whole villainous response to the whole Olivia notoriety.
It's like Roxanne's Revenge if Roxanne was actually a real person.
Yeah, totally.
It's like really flipping the complicated outcome of Olivia writing really great songs about her experience that she very much should have and did a great job with. But I think obviously the response from the public was less than desirable. And sometimes the artist can't really control how it gets out of hand. But of course, Sabrina was very often slut shamed in the context of this love triangle. And I think for her to really own something that is like super hypersexual and to make it really iconic and amazing and feel very her and feel very empowering and funny, I think it has been a really smart kind of handling of a really sticky and messy situation it could have spiraled out even more into. And I think that was the best move that she's had so far. All of these songs are, so much of the humor is that, kind of very tongue-in-cheek, very horny lyrics and things like that. She's having a lot of fun with it in a really smart and capable way.
Rob, I do want to say, to your point, yes, these are all really funny and fun artists. And I do think if we're looking for a sociological explanation for this moment, there's a lot of anxiety in the world right now. Historically, that is when people look for, shiny, fun distraction. And so we're just begging for it right now, clearly.
Yeah.
It's not even so much shiny fun, is that these are really like barbed wits. Like they are very like, there's a real cattiness through all these hit records.
These are really great vocalists who have been putting on really fun stage productions, even when they were as opening acts. Again, testament to the Nonsense outros is people were looking forward. People are waiting for the Nonsense outros before the Eras tour, which is there's already so much people are like waiting for with every night of the Eras tour. To be an opening act for the Eras tour and then have your own thing that people are wanting to watch after is insane. So I think these are like artists, again, like the live part of it really cannot go like any understated in terms of how that has been such a massive catalyst for them over the years, but also will be continuing to make them massive.
You're absolutely right. And I think the other side of that is the very emphasis on live shows post-pandemic has the massive attendance and the massive focus on it has also opened a door for these artists. It just feels like an opening slot is more valuable than it once was. Because if you have an opening slot on the Olivia tour or Eras tour, it's gold, which is why the Breeders have a #1 song right now. It doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. Rob, we should talk about Shaboozey because that song is so fun. Tipsy.
Someone pour me up a double shot of whiskey. They know me and Jack Daniels got a history. There's a party downtown near 5th Street. Everybody at the bar getting tipsy.
It is so fun. And it goes in with what we've been talking about, these artists who have a real sense of history. Shaboozey knew what kind of country hit this needed to be and decided to make it. It's very much country hit, but also it's universal. And also it has that comedy appeal. You can't even call it a novelty because it's way too big for that. But it's just funny in a universal way that they knew was going to be funnier than the original target audience for this song. They knew that they were aiming for something bigger.
I was actually in a bar over the weekend and this came on. It was just so perfect. Slotted right next to You Give Love a Bad Name was the song before.
And that's where it'll stay slotted for until the end of time. As it should.
Right.
This is like the type of song you're going to hear in every single dive bar in the US for like decades to come. And it's going to be right next to all the kind of massive staples for that. It is what every bro country artist was trying to do in like 2014 and 2016 and did not get nearly to this level.
Florida Georgia Line cruised so Shaboozey could run.
May they cruise right into the Bermuda Triangle. But Tinashe is nasty.
I've been a nasty girl, nasty. I've been a nasty girl, nasty. I've been a nasty girl, nasty. I've been a nasty, nasty.
Again, if there's a benefit to TikTok is that people worry about people framing their songs for the age of TikTok and having catchy little bits for TikTok. But you know what? Catchy little bits are the essence of great pop music. So if it's helping people sharpen their hooks, great. The Match My Freak thing has become insanely ubiquitous, but it's just a great song beyond that.
Yeah, I do say Match My Freak like at least twice a day for no reason about the most random things. It could be like my iced coffee. Like it's stuck in my head constantly. But yeah, I mean, I love Tinashe. I think she is so brilliant. I think she has put out amazing songs over the years that have just gone woefully unnoticed in a way.
Name some of your favorites.
I like all of Night Ride, I think is so good. And I think the song Company from Night Ride should have been a number one hit. In my head, it's a number one hit.
And I just want some company, company. And I just need some company, company.
It's like one of my favorite R&B songs of the last decade. I think it is so good. I love Night Ride. I love Joyride, and her music as an independent artist has been exceptional. But yeah, she's someone, again, like a lot of these artists, and like I mentioned earlier, like she just had a really through the trenches of the industry and was on a major label. I don't want to speak too much on what happened with that because I don't really know if it was like she was dropped or she left, but at some point that partnership no longer became the right one for her, and she's been independent for the last few years. She was just someone who like could not match what that sort of like the early success of 2 On was, and was making music that was weirder and again a similar Charli trajectory.
If you ain't nigga, you ain't making no noise. Get ready to turn up with the big boys. Live fast, die young, that's my choice. Get money, get money.
They also had made a collaboration with Drop That Kitty with Ty Dolla $ign, which was I think a fun song that they did together many years ago during this kind of period of them being in like the industry trenches.
Drop that kitty down low. Pop that kitty down low. Shot that like a window. I'm gonna make you explode.
She has been such an incredible touring artist. She's one of the best live dancers, someone that like Janet Jackson has many times lauded for being so excellent live. And that's obviously the greatest compliment a dancing pop star can possibly get is Janet Jackson being a fan. And yeah, it's so fun to see her have this moment. I hope the song continues to get bigger. I hope that more attention is put on her music, both what comes out and what she's put out already. The dance that went viral was like not even originally for the song. I think a fan attached Nasty to this video of these 2 people who were in like a dance studio doing like a little bit of a wine type of dance, and it ended up fitting the song perfectly. And Tinashe, again, being someone who is very funny and very good at having a sense of humor about things, played into it in a really great way. She's made it a part of the official choreography for the song. She does it all the time, and she's played into it in a way that's not over the top, but also has been just like super fun and has allowed the song itself to breathe and the meme to exist as well.
It's a redemption arc that she really deserves after being so underrated for such a long time after such a huge initial burst of success. Aquarius is a perfect pop album. Yeah. I just love that one. All Hands on Deck is, I think, one of the great lost songs of the 2010s.
All hands on deck. All in the front, all in the back, just like that.
She was someone who has deserved a moment like this for a long time, so it's really gratifying.
My favorite use of the "Are You Gonna Match My Freak" sound.
Somebody gonna match my freak? Is somebody gonna match my freak? Is somebody gonna match my nasty?
Is the official Smashing Pumpkins account used it over footage of Rivers Cuomo and Billy Corgan recording a podcast together, which I have to find. I want to hear when they talk. Yeah, it's so perfect.
Those are 2 that match their freaks. So like that is a real match my freak moment.
That's a feat. No, I love it.
I actually think, to the contrary, I think those are 2 people whose freaks are unmatchable by any other human being. But I'm glad they tried.
Well, crucify the unmatched freaks tonight.
Somebody should play it over Lindsay and Stevie footage. I think that's the other way to go.
Listen, if I could edit videos, I don't think I won't. I'm going to actually learn how to edit videos just to make that. We need like Bruce and Clarence.
You just read my mind. Instead of writing articles next week, we're going to make a classic rock Match My Freak super mix.
The 3 of us are going to video editing crash course. We got to make some very hyper specific viral videos.
Yeah, I'll take the David Bowie and Mick Ronson ones.
and of course Neil Girardo and Pat Benatar.
Or just have the entire like Mick Jagger, David Bowie.
Someone needs to tell Mick he needs to come out at the next Stones concert and be like, "Are you ready to match my freak? I'm working late because I'm a singer."
Don't embarrass me, motherfucker.
I do need to hear Keith Richards say that Mi Espresso actually right now.
That needs to be over footage of Keith with a needle in his arm. I think that's Mi Espresso. But okay. Well, on that note, a hot pop summer indeed. Rob and Brittany, as always, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's our show. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, subscribe to Rolling Stone Music Now, wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us 5 stars and a nice review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, because that's always appreciated. But as always, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week.